So to go in a little bit more depth about the 3 moves, this is the 3 moves chart that's also posted on the course website. I encourage you to open it on your own screen so you can take a look at it on your own, but I'm going to go through it very briefly with you. So move 1, we discussed that this is establishing a research territory, that this is identifying the general area or the general problem scope that we're going to be talking about. By showing that, so move 1A, by showing that the general research is important, central, interesting, problematic, or relevant in some way. So this is optional, but you do need to do 1B, which is introducing and reviewing items of previous research in the area. So this is the purpose of a lit review, or the introduction to your research paper, is you must review what has previously been done in your field. You can't just start with your own research and just start with your own perspective. You need to address previous research and to show how your research fits into the greater scope of all the work that's been done on your topic. So then we're going to move on to move 2, which remember is the hinge between move 1 and move 3 to show what the general topic is, move 2, and then you're going to move on to specifically how your research is going to fill that void. So move 2 is you're going to indicate a gap in the previous research, or by extending previous knowledge in some way. So in move 1, remember, we needed to talk about the previous research and show what has been done. So then move 2, you need to indicate what hasn't been done yet. Where's the void? Where's the hole that you're going to fill? And then move 3, you're going to occupy that niche. So in move 2, you're going to say what void is there in this research, what hole is there, what more needs to be done on this topic. And then move 3, you're going to specifically outline how the present research is going to do that. So that's the obligatory part, is to outline the purposes or stating the nature of the present research, is specifically how is your research going to help to fill this hole that's been left by previous scholarship, or that's been unaddressed by previous scholarship. A number of different ways that you can do this. Again, these are going to depend on your field and what's customary in your field. How do people show that their research is something that solves a problem? And so B, C, D, and E are all going to be ways that you can do this. So B would be by listing research questions or hypotheses. If you're going to be going about an experiment, what's your original research question? So if you're going to be going through an experiment, for example, in B, what's the original research question? What's the original hypothesis that you're going to be proceeding with? With C, you can announce principal findings. So what were the main findings in your study? Maybe you want to bring those up at the beginning and say, this is the end point. We have these great findings, and then your reader can decide to continue with your paper to understand maybe how you got to those findings. You can do that. D is by stating the value of the present research, is to say, well, there's this important issue that needs to be solved, and here's why this research is so valuable, because my research really does a great job of solving this problem. So maybe that's something you want to do. And some papers with E talk about the structure of the research paper and what's to come. So you can say, first, the researchers examine this. Second, they examine this. Thirdly, they conclude this. You can definitely talk about how you're going to organize the structure of your paper. That may be how you occupy the niche. But remember with move 3 that you need to outline specifically the purpose of your research, so what you're going to do, and also why is your research going to be the research that fills that void that you identified in move 2. So some ways of doing that, B through E. You can go ahead and pick one of these, but notice again that there's room here for you to decide what's going to be best for your paper. And again, like I said, which one of these you choose may also be determined by the field that you're in and what's customary in terms of research and experimentation. So let's take a look at an example research paper. This is the research paper that's located on the course site, so if you want to open that up on your own screen and follow along, you're more than welcome to do that. This was written by a previous student in the SL 501, so this is a student research paper. So this is something that you can, you can absolutely, all of you can absolutely do this. So the introduction starts, indigenous peoples have suffered greatly in Latin America since colonial times. Even after the nation's processes of independence, these peoples continued being exploited. It was only in 1989 that the International Labor Organization created a document called Convention 169 that aimed to protect indigenous workers. And only in September 2007 that the United Nations created the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in order to recognize the suffering of these peoples and protect their rights. So here we have part of at least the beginning of move one, is we've identified a research area, a very broad research area. She's introduced the topic to us. We're going to be talking about the rights of indigenous people in Latin America throughout time, a diachronic perspective. We have an idea of what the paper is going to be. So this is definitely move one. So we're going to start off here by placing the reader in the general scope of the topic that we're going to be discussing. So that's the first part of move one, is establish the topic. Second paragraph goes on to maybe get us some more information about the documents, despite the great importance of these documents, especially because they show the UN recognition of this extremely delicate subject. They did not lead to a significant change regarding the suppression of the colonization of these peoples, for every nation is sovereign and has the right not to obey them, even if they had confirmed adherence. For this reason, a greater step needs to be taken towards the sustenance of indigenous peoples' rights. So here we get more of a negative tone. So although there's this issue, despite what they've done, this is still the problem. For this reason, a greater step needs to be taken towards the sustenance of indigenous people's rights. So this is an introduction of the problem. So very clear articulation of what's the issue here. So we've established the topic in the first paragraph, and in the second we're going to start to get a little bit more in depth, a little bit more specific about where's the problem that we're going to talk about in this paper. So already as a reader, I know pretty much, I have a good idea of where this paper is going to go. I assume it's going to identify some more problems regarding the indigenous rights of Latin American people, and I also probably am going to expect that the author offers some kind of a solution. So already I kind of get an understanding of where the paper is going to go, and that's part of the CAR steps, is to really illustrate to your reader where you're going to go with your paper. So this next paragraph, in 1989, the International Labour Organization issued a document called Convention 169 that had the purpose of adopting new international standards regarding the rights of indigenous peoples. Okay, so this sentence is going to signify, I think this paragraph is probably going to have some more background information in it, because as a member of the general population, I may not know very much about this topic, and it's the writer's job to give me the background I need to know to understand, first, what's the issue, and two, why is it important to talk about this? So don't rush your background information. Give your reader the information they need to know to follow along with you throughout the paper successfully. And this is also the place, for example, if you're talking about a very technical issue, that you're going to want to break down your definitions and say, this is my broad topic, and here are the introductory definitions that you need to understand my paper. So the introduction is a good place for that too. On the next page, this paragraph expanding the terms stated in Convention 169, the United Nations created the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Okay, so again, more background information that I need to know to understand the context of the problem. So again, this is an emphasis not to rush this part of your paper, is to really take the time to make sure that your reader has all the information they need to know to really understand why you're talking about this and why this research is significant. The next paragraph, the importance of these documents and these specific articles to this research rests in the fact that they are being disregarded and neglected by governments that have previously accepted to fulfill the UN specifications. So we're going to get a little bit more specific to focus on these documents. She's reiterating the problem. She's discussing the problem again. This is starting to get into move two, is we're going to start to say, what's the problem? What's the issue? This is also the place in another type of a paper where you would start to say, although this research is, this research has lots of merits, has a lot of value, this particular topic has not been focused on, or this particular question has not been answered. So as you're getting kind of into the meat of the paper, page 3, page 4 of the introduction, that's when you're going to want to start to really address what problem it is that your research is going to provide a solution to. And then finally, the last part of this paper before we get into, if you see violating Indigenous international rights on the 4th page in bold, this is the author's subhead that's going to signify this is probably the body of the paper starting. So you can see at the end of this introductory section, she's got this sentence, these studies point out to the fact that states are not obeying the international law and that therefore the international prepositions by the UN are not sufficient to protect Indigenous rights. So I get the idea. This is her thesis, this is her main point, that what the UN is doing is not sufficient, and I'm expecting in the later parts of the paper that she's probably going to suggest what the UN needs to do to improve this, what sorts of conditions or laws need to be put into place to make the conditions better for these people. This is definitely move 3. This is where I start to get an idea of what her research is going to be doing, what argument she is making, what point she's trying to get across. So as you can see, moves 1, 2, and 3 do work together. Moves 1 really identifies the general area of the topic, provides the background information the reader needs to know to understand your issue. Move 2 starts to illustrate a hole or a problem or something that needs to be addressed. And then move 3, at the end of that, is your thesis, which really articulates what your research is going to be doing. So the lit review will differ from field to field. The rules of thumb presented in this presentation are obviously very general and very basic, and they can be applied to a variety of fields. However, it would be best for you to familiarize yourself with the lit reviews written within your own discipline, and to find out what information is prioritized, maybe what organization or structure is usually used, so that you can start to become a member of that community, and to tailor your own work to best fit in with what the standard is in your own discipline. You're going to identify a void in the research space. So now that you've surveyed all of the work that's been done, you're going to identify a hole and say, well, no information has been published here yet. This problem needs to be attended to. No one has argued with this theoretician on this particular theory that he's made, and this is the argument that I'm going to offer. And then you're going to illustrate how your research will fill that void so that someone can ultimately build off of your work someday. Okay? Talk to you soon.